A real-life Hollywood whodunit. In 2002, actor Robert Blake was arrested and tried for fatally shooting his second wife, 44-year-old con artist Bonnie Lee Bakley. Blake pleaded not guilty and was famously acquitted. But to this day,
Robert Blake, 60s, once the real deal as TV's tough guy detective, is off his game. He was the beloved face of justice on Beretta, but the glory days were way over. Then he meets Bonnie Lee Bakley, 40s. Bonnie is pure drama, a major league groupie with a rep for chasing wealthy, famous guys. Blake's buddies were like, dude, she's trouble, straight up. She's a certified gold digger. But Blake was hooked. Their dynamic was hella volatile. When Bonnie gave birth in 2000, DNA confirmed Blake was the pops. Against his better judgment, he married her. But Blake was always sketchy about his new wife. Friends later said he never truly trusted her, and their marriage was a total train wreck, full of tension and bad vibes. Blake was desperate to get out. This was not the clean-cut role fans remembered. The pressure was building, and everyone knew this whole situation was about to blow up.
May 4th, 2001. Blake and Bonnie are having dinner, their last meal, at an Italian joint in Studio City. Blake later tells the cops the whole thing was totally normal. After dinner, they head back to his car. Here's where it gets shady. Blake claims Bonnie got in the car and then he realized he'd left his personal piece, a handgun, inside the restaurant. He says he went right back to grab it. When he returned, just minutes later, he found Bonnie slumped over in the passenger seat. She'd been shot. She was toast, dead right there on the quiet street. At first, the cops thought maybe a random stick-up, a tragic hit. But the details were jacked up. Blake carried a gun, and investigators were not buying his story for 1 second. They started digging into the couple's gnarly marriage. This wasn't some cold-blooded random attack. This was personal. The police were already making a strong case that the famed detective might actually be a cold-blooded killer in real life.
The trial turned into a total circus. It was one of the biggest celebrity court cases since O.J. Simpson, and the media was eating it up. The prosecution was all in, painting Blake as this desperate cat who was trapped and willing to pay anybody to take Bonnie out. The bombshell? 2 stuntmen testified, claiming Blake tried to hire them for the hit in the months prior. Blake was adamant. He denied everything. The defense team, though, had a major point. There was no smoking gun. The murder weapon was found nearby, but no fingerprints, no DNA connecting it directly to Blake. It was all based on circumstantial evidence and he said, she said testimony. Blake looked frail every day in court. After months of this legal drama, the jury came back. The foreman read the verdict. Not guilty. Blake totally lost it in court. He'd beaten the rap, but the public opinion was still brutal. Blake thought he was home free, but the drama wasn't a done deal. Bonnie's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit in civil court. This time the game was different. They only needed a lower standard of proof, not beyond a reasonable doubt, just preponderance of the evidence. The civil jury was not having Blake's story. They sided with Bonnie's family, finding him responsible for her death. The judge was straight savage, ordering Blake to pay a whopping $30 million. That verdict wiped him out. All the dough he made in his Hollywood run? Gone. He was bankrupt. Blake spent his final years shunned by Hollywood, insisting he was innocent and that he loved his daughter's mom. But the damage was done. His legacy was trashed. The difference between the two verdicts just goes to show how messed up the system can be. He died in 2023, still protesting, but for the public, the civil verdict was the final, devastating word.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant, Philip Spector, guilty of the crime of second-degree murder of Lana Clarkson in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony, as charged in Count 1 of the indictment.
Phil Spector was a straight-up musical genius, the cat who invented the wall of sound. He was minting money and responsible for some of the biggest records ever. But Spector was always extra. His talent came with a gnarly side of madness. Over the years, he became totally off the rails, a reclusive, controlling weirdo with a notorious obsession with guns. Stories about him pulling a piece on musicians during recording sessions and threatening people became legend. He was surrounded by fame, but completely isolated, locked away in his spooky mansion, Pyrenees Castle. The whole music industry knew Spector was a ticking time bomb. His brilliance was undeniable, but his behavior was a serious, dangerous problem. He had zero chill, and everyone figured that eventually his toxic combination of ego and firearms was going to blow up. On a chilly night in 2003, Phil Spector was out and about, which was rare for the reclusive star. He ended up at the House of Blues and ran into Lana Clarkson, a struggling actress who was working as a hostess there. Clarkson was just a regular Joe trying to make a living, and Spector was straight up obsessed with getting her attention. He convinced her to come back to his isolated, creepy Pyrenees castle in Alhambra for a drink. Lana likely thought she was getting a career opportunity, but it was just the beginning of a nightmare. Once they were alone in the huge house, the night quickly took a dark turn. The details are sketchy, but within hours of arriving, Lana Clarkson was dead, shot in the head right there in the mansion's foyer. The scene was shocking, the crime was immediate, and the legend was about to turn into a full-blown murder suspect. The cops arrived at the mansion, and the scene was brutal. Lana Clarkson was dead, and Spector was in total shock. His defense was totally wild. He claimed Clarkson had died by accidental suicide, suggesting she had somehow kissed the gun. But his story was immediately trashed by his chauffeur, Adriano de Souza. De Souza was the smoking gun, testifying that Spector came running out of the house moments after the shot, holding a bloody piece and mumbling, "I think I killed somebody." The first trial in 2007 was a media circus and ended in a mistrial, a hung jury. The defense argued reasonable doubt due to Spector's erratic history with guns and the lack of forensic certainty. But the prosecution came back hard for the second trial, determined to put the famous producer behind bars for the murder of Lana Clarkson. In 2009, after a long, intense second trial, the jury finally came back with a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Spector's face went slack. His fame and fortune couldn't buy him out of this one. The judge was straight savage, sentencing the legendary producer to 19 years to life in prison. The final outcome proved that Spector's toxic combination of power, guns, and severe mental instability was a done deal. He served his time in a California state prison, and the Wall of Sound genius was reduced to a maximum security inmate. Phil Spector died in prison in January 2021 at the age of 81. His passing marked the final tragic end to a career that was equally defined by musical genius and the cold-blooded murder of Lana Clarkson.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Michael Andrew Jace, guilty of the crime of murder of April Jace.
It took the jury of 6 men and 6 women just about 2 hours to reach a verdict, finding the 53-year-old former actor of The Shield guilty.
Michael Jace was a working actor who hit the big time playing Officer Julian Lowe on the gritty FX drama The Shield. He was a straight-up cop star on TV, but once the show was done, deal. The hustle got real. He was doing odd jobs and side gigs, and the money was getting sketchy. Jace was stressed out, a classic Hollywood story of a guy who couldn't handle the fame fade. At home, things were a hot mess too. His wife, April Lawn Jace, was a successful track coach, and the financial pressure was entirely on her. Jace's ego was clapped back by the reality of his declining career. The contrast between the powerful TV cop and the desperate, struggling actor was huge, and Jace started to show serious mental cracks. He had zero chill left, and that financial strain mixed with his escalating insecurity was turning his home life into a total train wreck. The relationship had been super volatile for months, fueled by Michael Jace's paranoia. He was absolutely convinced April was having an affair, though she was working hard to support their family. On May 19th, 2014, April came home, and Michael was waiting. He was livid, immediately confronting her about the alleged infidelity. The argument quickly escalated into a desperate, physical fight. April knew he was off the rails and tried to leave the home, but he blocked the exit. He then dragged her into the hallway and did the unthinkable. He took a piece, a handgun, and shot her. The whole confrontation was terrifying. But the worst part? Their two young sons, ages 5 and 8, were right there, witnessing the entire brutal fight. This was no accident. This was a calculated act of rage fueled by jealousy, insecurity, and his utter inability to handle his business. After the initial shot, April was already injured. Michael Jace was not done. Driven by a savage rage, he allegedly dragged his wife into another room just to make sure their sons saw what he was doing. He shot her 2 more times, right in front of the kids, in a cold-blooded execution. In a final, chilling move, Jace didn't run. He called 911 himself and told the operator, "I shot my wife." The 2 young boys were freaked out, forced to watch their father murder their mother in their own home. When the cops arrived, the scene was brutal. The man who played the police officer on TV was now standing trial for the second-degree killing of his wife. The evidence was a slam dunk: his own confession on the 911 tape and the traumatized testimony of his sons. Jace's fame was trashed, replaced by the image of a domestic abuser and killer. The trial in 2016 was gnarly, with the prosecution emphasizing the devastating testimony of the young boys who were forced to witness the crime. The defense tried to argue Jace was simply distraught, but the judge and jury weren't buying it. Jace showed zero remorse, remaining largely emotionless throughout the proceedings. He was convicted of second-degree murder. The sentence delivered a firm, cold message about the severity of domestic violence. The judge handed Jace 40 years to life in state prison. His career, his family, and his freedom were done deal. Michael Jace went from playing a cop on a hit TV show to becoming an inmate who would likely die in prison. His story is a devastating final act, proving that TV fame means absolutely nothing when you commit murder in your own living room.
And yet we are awaiting some reaction after learning Danny Masterson was sentenced to 30 years in prison after being convicted of those 2 rapes earlier this year. Masterson learning his fate just moments ago here at LA Superior Court. Now, the 3 women in this case.
Danny Masterson was killing it as Stephen Hyde on That 70s Show, the ultimate cool guy cat in Hollywood. He had this whole relaxed rock and roll vibe that made him super popular. But behind the scenes of the laugh tracks, things were hella sketchy. Starting in the early 2000s, multiple women, all connected through the Church of Scientology, which Masterson was a prominent member of, claimed he sexually assaulted them. The victims faced a gnarly dilemma. They wanted justice, but they were allegedly discouraged or flat out prevented by church doctrine from going to the cops. They were reportedly told they couldn't report a high-ranking member, turning the church into an alleged cover-up machine. For years, Masterson was home free, protected by the Code of Silence, while the victims had their lives trashed. Years later, the Me Too movement hit Hollywood like a freight train, finally giving the women the courage to speak up. 3 women, known in court as Jane Does, all filed reports with the LAPD, alleging Masterson had raped them in his Hollywood Hills home. The claims were brutal, that he had allegedly put drugs in their drinks to make them pass out before he violently raped them. The victims testified that when they initially tried to report the assaults to the church, they were allegedly shunned and warned not to go to the authorities. They were told they couldn't snitch on another member of high standing. This messed up doctrine was the key to understanding why the case took over a decade to be formally filed. Masterson was charged with 3 felony counts of rape. The stage was set for a massive, unprecedented legal battle against a major TV star. The legal battle was a total circus. The first trial in 2022 ended in a mistrial. The jury was hopelessly deadlocked on all 3 counts. The victims were totally devastated. But the prosecution came back hard for the retrial in 2023, and this time the judge allowed the women to testify openly about the church's alleged interference. This game changer explained to the jury why the women delayed reporting the crimes. The prosecution painted Masterson as a serial predator who used his influence for protection. After 7 days of deliberation, the jury finally delivered. Guilty on 2 counts of forcible rape. Masterson's defense tried to argue the acts were consensual, but the jury was not buying it. The verdict was a massive victory for the Jane Does and huge blow to the defense team. The sentencing hearing was powerful and super emotional. The 2 women Masterson was convicted of raping delivered devastating victim impact statements, detailing the decades of trauma and suffering he had inflicted. One victim told him he was, quote, pathetic, disturbed, and completely violent. The judge, Charlene F. Olmedo, was straight savage, telling Masterson, "You are not the victim here." She rejected the defense's plea for concurrent sentences. The hammer fell hard. Masterson was sentenced to the maximum 30 years to life in prison. His career was done deal, his fame was trashed, and his powerful connections couldn't save him. The former TV star was immediately taken into custody, trading the spotlight for the harsh reality of a California state prison. Justice was finally served, bringing a measure of peace to the women who bravely fought the system for decades.
In Private Ryan, I related to Sarge more because I'm more like that. I'm not.
Tom Sizemore was a straight-up Hollywood tough guy, killing it in blockbusters like Saving Private Ryan and Heat. He had that raw, intense energy that made him the real deal on screen. But off-camera, his life was a total mess. A certified train wreck fueled by a heavy drug habit, especially meth. The fame and the money just made his addiction worse. He had zero chill, and his behavior was increasingly erratic and volatile. He quickly got this reputation in Hollywood for being a brilliant actor who was completely unreliable and off the rails. While he was playing disciplined soldiers on screen, he was spending his free time chasing a high and making sketchy decisions that would eventually blow up his entire career. His self-destructive lifestyle was already legendary before the actual criminal charges started rolling in. Sizemore's chaotic life hit a major snag when he got involved with Heidi Fleiss, the infamous Hollywood madam. Their relationship was super volatile, pure drama. In 1997, things escalated massively. Sizemore was charged with assaulting Fleiss, resulting in a felony conviction. But he didn't learn his lesson. Even after the conviction, he was straight up threatening her with voicemails that were so gnarly they ended up being played in court, proving his continued obsession and rage. His defense team tried to save him, but the evidence was slam dunk. He was sentenced and given strict probation, which meant he was officially on the legal hook. This wasn't just a minor celebrity dust-up. This was his first major L, signaling that his dark side had officially taken over his professional life, making him a registered criminal. After the assault conviction, Sizemore's life became a relentless cycle of arrests. He was constantly getting busted for drug offenses, mainly methamphetamine. That crystal was his downfall. He'd get out of jail, violate probation almost immediately by failing a drug test, and then get sent right back inside. It was a total hot mess. The courts were not buying his excuses anymore. Every time he was released, he'd find a way to snitch on himself with another violation. Hollywood quickly decided he was too flaky to hire. The work dried up and his career was essentially trashed. He had countless chances, court-ordered rehab, probation programs, but he couldn't kick the habit. This phase of his life was less about acting and more about bouncing between short prison stints and the county jail. The courts finally had zero chill left for Tom Sizemore. In 2007, after yet another probation violation, the judge handed him a proper prison sentence, not just a short stint in jail, but hard time in a state facility. He was done deal with second chances. The tough guy persona he played on screen faded completely in the reality of his prison uniform. His attempts to get clean were chronicled publicly, but the addiction was a beast he could never truly defeat. Despite getting small roles later on, his peak career was over, a victim of his own catastrophic choices. Sizemore passed away in 2023 following a brain aneurysm. His legacy isn't defined by his intense movie roles, but by the tragic, self-inflicted destruction of his talent, proving that even a powerful Hollywood cat can be absolutely wrecked by addiction and toxic behavior.
Those bombshell confessions straight from the headlines. That famous TV dad, actor Stephen Collins, coming forward for the first time. Why now?
One tweet sums up the scandal. Reverend Camden, how could you? Tonight, the
Stephen Collins was the ultimate straight-up TV dad, known across the globe as Reverend Eric Camden on Seventh Heaven. He was the face of morality, the wholesome, perfect patriarch who always had the right advice. He was killing it. The public loved him. His image was so clean, it was practically untouchable. But behind the scenes, Collins was harboring a gnarly, dark secret that dated back decades. This was the biggest case of a public persona being a total lie. The contrast between the moral, family-first father figure he played and the alleged predator he hid was absolutely sickening. No one suspected that the man who preached faith and virtue on primetime television was living a life that was hella problematic and highly criminal. The bomb that was about to drop would not only trash his career, but shatter the legacy of an entire generation's favorite TV family. Collins's marriage to actress Faye Grant was a train wreck, and when the couple filed for divorce, things got super messy. During the divorce proceedings in 2014, a massive, shocking piece of evidence was leaked, a private audio recording from one of Collins's therapy sessions. This wasn't some minor scandal, this was the smoking gun. On the tape, Collins was heard confessing to past inappropriate conduct involving minors, spanning 2 decades, between 1973 and 1994. The moment that tape hit the public domain, the media freaked out. The clean-cut image of the TV reverend was instantly and brutally trashed, replaced by the image of a confessed predator. The entire world listened in horror as the man who taught moral lessons admitted to his heinous crimes that had been hidden for so long. The public reaction was brutal. The massive betrayal of trust was felt across the country. Networks had zero chill. Collins was immediately fired from every single project he was currently working on. The entire Seventh Heaven cast and crew were totally devastated, expressing shock and disgust. His scenes were yanked from reruns, and his name was scrubbed from future projects. He went from being a respected Hollywood actor to a pariah overnight. The industry made it done deal. His career was officially over. The allegations were so gnarly and the confession so clear that there was no defense, no arguing his way out of the massive public condemnation. His entire legacy was instantly destroyed, and he withdrew completely from public life. He was shunned by the very community that had celebrated his phony moral image. Despite the clear confession on the therapy tape, the legal system had a major hitch. Because the crimes were committed decades ago, between 1973 and 1994, the district attorney's office ultimately announced that no criminal charges could be filed against Stephen Collins. The statute of limitations, the legal deadline for prosecuting old crimes, had unfortunately run out. While he dodged a physical prison sentence due to a technicality, his punishment was absolute. The actor who played the moral authority was stripped of his career, his reputation, and his public life. He was completely shunned by Hollywood. Collins was financially and professionally bankrupt. His case serves as a chilling, frustrating reminder that sometimes the biggest villains can't be prosecuted, but the court of public opinion can still deliver a final, devastating judgment.
Mr. Garrison's status, so to speak.
It was a somber courtroom in Beverly Hills Wednesday when Judge Eldon Fox sentenced actor Lane Garrison to 3 years and 4 months in prison for a drunken driving crash that left one.
Lane Garrison was killing it on the small screen, playing the character Tweener on the hit show Prison Break. His career was blowing up, and he was enjoying the fame and the party scene that came with it. But Garrison was off the rails outside of the studio. He was known for having zero chill when it came to partying, and his lifestyle was definitely sketchy. Like so many young Hollywood cats, he felt like he was untouchable, believing his celebrity status was a shield against consequences. He often hung out with much younger fans, fostering a chaotic and hella irresponsible atmosphere around him. This contrast between the fictional convict he played on TV and the real-life recklessness he lived set the stage for a massive disaster that would not only trash his career, but tragically end an innocent life.
The night of December 2, 2006, was a total mess. Lane Garrison, 26, was driving his SUV, carrying 3 teenagers, one of whom was 17-year-old Vahagan Setian. Garrison had allegedly been drinking and providing alcohol to the minors, a straight-up felony before the car even started. He was driving recklessly and fast on the streets of Beverly Hills. In a terrifying moment of speeding and carelessness, Garrison lost control of the heavy vehicle. The SUV slammed directly into a tree. The impact was brutal and immediate. The party was instantly over, replaced by chaos and tragedy. The actor, who was supposed to be a responsible adult, had just put the lives of 4 people, including himself, in immediate catastrophic danger. He walked away from the wreckage, but the consequences were just beginning to hit him like a freight train.
The human cost of Garrison's reckless drive was devastating. His 17-year-old passenger, Vahan Sadian, was dead on arrival. 2 other 15- and 16-year-old girls in the car were seriously injured and traumatized. Garrison was immediately arrested and charged with a gnarly list of offenses: vehicular manslaughter, driving under the influence, and providing alcohol to minors. The victim's family was totally devastated, demanding justice for their son. Facing overwhelming evidence and the severe emotional toll, Garrison made the strategic decision to cop a plea and pleaded guilty to the charges. The evidence was a slam dunk, making a trial a pointless risk. The former TV star realized his life was done deal in Hollywood, and now he had to pay the ultimate price for his negligence. At the sentencing hearing, the courtroom was filled with sorrow. The judge heard emotional victim impact statements that detailed the permanent agony caused by Garrison's selfish actions. The judge had zero chill, focusing on the actor's egregious irresponsibility in driving while intoxicated with minors in the car. He was sentenced to 40 months, 3 years and 4 months, in state prison. The irony was brutal. The actor who played a convict trying to escape prison on TV now had to serve hard time in a real prison cell because of his own criminal recklessness. Garrison was ultimately released early for good behavior, but his career was permanently trashed. The tragedy serves as a constant, cold reminder that the fame and privilege of Hollywood cannot save you from the consequences of a DUI and vehicular homicide.
Now to that shocking murder mystery out of Hollywood that ended up with up-and-coming TV actor dead. Johnny Lewis starred in the show Sons of Anarchy, and officials say he went on a violent rampage, allegedly killing his landlady and then himself. Was a designer drug behind all of it? Well, ABC's David.
Johnny Lewis was a promising young actor, best known for playing Kip Halfsack Epps on the hit show Sons of Anarchy. He was a working cat in Hollywood, scoring parts on The OC and other shows. But in the years leading up to 2012, things went off the rails. Lewis suffered a gnarly head trauma from a motorcycle accident in 2011, and according to his family, this was the start of a sudden and severe behavioral spiral. He was dealing with increasing mental health issues and a lack of permanent housing. Between 2011 and 2012, he was arrested 3 times for violent offenses, including assaulting men with a bottle. Probation officials were straight up concerned, noting he was a threat to any community. The bright, talented actor was rapidly turning into a violent, paranoid hot mess. His fate was looking seriously sketchy.
Lewis's arrests continued, leading to him being in and out of jail. Just days before the final tragedy, he was released from a short stint in custody. He returned to the writer's villa, the home of his 81-year-old landlady, Catherine Davis, who was known for renting rooms to up-and-coming artists. She was trying to help him out. However, the mental state of the young actor was totally volatile. Lewis had rejected psychiatric treatment and refused MRI scans recommended after his motorcycle crash. This was the ultimate train wreck waiting to happen. On the morning of September 26, 2012, neighbors heard the kind-hearted landlady screaming. The violence that erupted was swift, brutal, and inexplicable. The scene was set for a terrifying end to a very sad story. The scene was brutal. Police later determined that Lewis had killed Catherine Davis through manual strangulation and blunt force trauma to her head. Her pet cat was also found dead, having been beaten to death. After the horrific attack inside, Lewis became completely off the rails. Neighbors saw him jump over a fence, assault a house painter and the homeowner next door, and then jump back over the fence onto Davis's property. Seconds later, Lewis either fell or jumped from the roof, garage, or patio of the house, landing dead in the driveway. Witnesses were freaked out by his sudden, extreme violence. Detectives concluded that Lewis was the sole suspect in the murder and that the actor's death, despite initial speculation, was an accidental fall while attempting to flee the scene. The aftermath was filled with confusion and speculation. Initial reports suggested Lewis was high on drugs like PCP or crystal meth, fueled by neighbor accounts of him exhibiting superhuman strength. However, the autopsy report later delivered a shocking twist. Lewis had no drugs or alcohol in his system when he died. His death was officially ruled accidental. This finding supported the theory that his violence was due to untreated mental illness, possibly triggered by the 2011 head trauma. Lewis's death at age 28 was a final, tragic L. Sons of Anarchy creator Kurt Sutter summed it up, saying he wished he was shocked, but Lewis had lost his way. The case stands as a devastating coda to a promising career, ruined not by a Hollywood scandal, but by sudden, violent internal collapse.
We begin with breaking news. An actor from the hit show Glee has been found dead.
The details are just coming in on this. CBS 2's Juan Fernandez.
Mark Salling was a major deal as Noah Puck Puckerman on the hit show Glee. He played the quintessential bad boy with a heart of gold, a total cat whose character had a redemption arc the fans loved. He was killing it, famous all over the globe, enjoying the fame and the attention. But Saling's real life was hella sketchy and hid a darkness far more sinister than any high school drama. The clean, musical image he projected was a total lie, a deceptive mask hiding a secret life. While his on-screen persona was learning life lessons, Salling was allegedly engaged in disturbing activities off-camera. This contrast between the wholesome pop culture phenomenon and the alleged predator he hid was a gnarly betrayal, setting the stage for one of Hollywood's most rapid and devastating downfalls. Saling's world came crashing down in December 2015. Law enforcement executed a search warrant at his home, and what they found was brutal. Hundreds of files containing unlawful digital content involving minors. This wasn't some minor drug charge or probation violation. This was a serious federal felony. Salling was immediately arrested, and the news sent a massive shockwave through Hollywood and the global Glee fan base. The man who played the cool guy was suddenly exposed as an alleged predator. His image was instantly and permanently trashed. The fame he enjoyed made the exposure even more intense, and he was immediately shunned by the industry. The evidence was reportedly a slam dunk, leaving Salling facing the severe, cold reality of the federal justice system. Facing overwhelming evidence that made a trial a pointless risk, Mark Salling made the decision to cop a plea in late 2017. He pleaded guilty to one count of possession of unlawful digital content involving minors. By pleading guilty, he hoped to get a lighter sentence, but the federal guidelines were straight savage. He was facing a minimum of 4 years and a maximum of 7 years in a federal prison, plus mandatory registration as a sex offender. This was a severe consequence that would erase any possibility of a comeback. He knew his life was done deal. The fame, the fortune, the Hollywood dreams, all gone. He was released on bond and forced to live with the intense pressure of awaiting his fate. Knowing the day he walked into the courtroom for sentencing, he would walk directly into a prison cell. The pressure of the impending sentencing was clearly too much. Weeks before he was scheduled to face the judge, Mark Salling was found dead by suicide in the Los Angeles riverbed. It was a tragic, heartbreaking end to a life that had so much potential, yet was destroyed by criminal behavior. His death meant that Salling never had to face the victims or serve his time in federal prison. The case was immediately closed, leaving a complicated and painful legacy. The finality of his actions was a devastating L for his family, and a tragic conclusion to the story of the popular TV star who fell from the ultimate height of fame into the lowest depth of criminal infamy. His case remains a dark reminder of the hidden evil that can lurk behind a beloved public face.
This morning, an exclusive preview of tomorrow night's 48 Hours mystery called Dark Voyage, reported by Maureen Moss.
Skylar DeLeon was no major deal, just a cat who got a few small, uncredited gigs as a kid, including a quick side hustle on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. He wasn't killing it, he was just barely getting by. By the mid-2000s, DeLeon was totally desperate. He was married, had a couple of kids, and was seriously bankrupt. He was living a sketchy life with money problems piling up and his failed acting career a distant memory. This guy was looking for a quick score, and his greed was off the charts. He decided that the only way out of his financial train wreck was to resort to a major felony. Not just a robbery, but a calculated, cold-blooded scheme for murder. He was willing to trash his whole life and everyone else's just to get his hands on some serious dough. Tom and Jackie Hawks were a retiree couple living the dream, ready to sail the world on their beloved yacht, the Well-Deserved. They were looking to sell the boat, and that's where DeLeon saw his mark. He showed up pretending to be a wealthy buyer, totally charming and straight up trustworthy. He and his accomplices orchestrated a gnarly plot, arranging a final test run out on the ocean. The Hawks were not buying the fake contract, but they agreed to the sea trial. Once they were miles offshore, far from any help, DeLeon and his crew dropped the facade. The couple was now trapped with a group of murderers who were determined to take everything they had, and their dream vacation instantly turned into a nightmare of pure terror.
The scene on the yacht was brutal. DeLeon and his accomplices quickly overpowered the Hawks couple. The motive was simple: money and the yacht itself. They forced Tom and Jackie to sign over the title of the yacht along with all of their bank details. Once the documents were signed, the done deal that secured DeLeon's payday, the crew decided the Hawks were too much of a risk to let live. In a horrifying, calculated act of execution, DeLeon and his team bound the couple to a heavy anchor. Tom and Jackie Hawks were pushed overboard, alive, into the vast Pacific Ocean to drown. They were simply gone. DeLeon sailed the yacht back to port, thinking he was home free. But stealing a yacht and committing double murder is not a crime the feds let slide, especially when money and a stolen boat are involved. The disappearance of the Hawks couple was hella sketchy from the jump, and the investigation quickly landed on the buyer, Skylar DeLeon. The evidence, including the forged signatures and accomplice testimony, was a slam dunk against him. The prosecution painted him as a merciless, greedy killer. The jury had zero chill for the man who murdered a trusting elderly couple for a yacht. DeLeon was convicted of double murder. The judge was straight savage, sentencing the former child extra to the death penalty, lethal injection, in 2009. DeLeon's life ended not as a famous actor, but as one of California's most infamous death row inmates, trading his desperate ambition for a permanent cell. The sheer greed and calculated evil of his plot made his fate absolute.